Hey guys, so over the past year and a half or so, I've been getting far more into reading nonfiction than I ever have been before, and seeing as is almost the end of Nonfiction November, today I thought I would share with you guys some recommendations for nonfiction books you might like to pick up. I'm going to go ahead and start off with memoirs because for me that was the easiest way to get into reading nonfiction. I think it's really easy to kind of translate your previously existing interests into memoirs or biographies that you might like to read. So the first memoir I have here to recommend to you guys is Fun Home, a family tragic comic by Alison Bechdel, and this is actually a graphic memoir. Alison Bechdel is an American lesbian and comic artist who runs the very long-standing comic strip Dykes to Watch Out For, and this is basically a look back at her family life growing up, specifically focusing on her relationship with her late father. Now, like I said, Alison is a lesbian, and a lot of this book deals with her discovering her sexuality and coming out to her family, during which time she realized that her father was also actually a gay man. I think this is a pretty fun memoir to read because it is a graphic memoir, like I said, and I really personally like Alison Bechdel's art style. I will say that I know some people have complained that there is too much text in here for this to be considered a strict graphic novel, but I also think this is a perfect memoir for people to read who are really into reading and how reading influences our lives and how we turn to books to explain things about ourselves. If you find you really like Fun Home, you can actually pick up Alison Bechdel's second memoir, Are You My Mother? A Comic Drama, which is a memoir that focuses more on her relationship with her mother. Now, I wasn't originally going to include this in the video because I haven't actually read this, so I can't with 100% certainty say I would recommend this to you guys, but given that I have read this several times and really enjoy it, I'm hoping that this one will be just as good. Another memoir I would definitely recommend is My Beloved World by Sonia Sotomayor, who is one of the current US justices on the Supreme Court and is actually the first Hispanic judge to be appointed to that position ever. If you're looking for a memoir about life as a federal judge or a Supreme Court justice, this is unfortunately not that, but this is still fantastic. It focuses mainly on Sotomayor's childhood and young adulthood and kind of ends when she first is appointed as a US federal judge. Sotomayor was born to immigrant parents who didn't really speak that much English, who weren't the best educated people, and yet who really put emphasis on letting their daughter learn. And I think this is a fantastic and really inspiring story about what hard work can do for you and how really putting your mind to something can take you places that you didn't ever think you could go. This was actually one of my favorite books of 2015, and I would also highly recommend the audiobook version. For another memoir that is slightly more topical, I would definitely recommend Spinster, Making a Life of One's Own by Kate Bollock. Now, if you are at all interested in feminism, I would definitely suggest this. This is Kate Bollock's exploration of life as a modern old maid, specifically what it's like to be a 40-something who is still not married. Although the framework of this book is very much a memoir of Kate's own life, she spends, I would say, the majority of the book really exploring the lives of these 5 female writers who she calls her awakeners, these women that kind of opened her eyes to this less traditional path. It was really interesting. I loved Kate's writing style. Then if you're interested in reading more topical nonfiction, I would highly recommend Not for Sale, The Return of the Global Slave Trade and How We Can Fight It by David Batstone. Now, David Batstone was actually a professor at my university and is kind of the head of this movement and nonprofit organization that works to stop modern day slavery and sex trafficking. I read this for a course in college, and while it was a little bit hard to get through because it is a difficult topic, this is so incredibly important, and it was very, very eye-opening. It really, like I said, explores modern day slavery and kind of the conditions that make the modern human trafficking trade possible, mainly poverty, lack of education, lack of healthcare, lack of opportunity for people around the world. It also makes you really aware of the power we all have as consumers and really will make you think about what you're buying, who you're buying things from, and think more critically about who it is that are making the products that you are consuming. Then I have a few more history related books to recommend. First of all, I would recommend Farewell to Manzanar by Jean Wakatsuki Houston and James D. Houston, which also could fall into the memoir category. Jean is a Japanese American, and when she was a child during World War II, she and her family were evacuated to the internment camp in Manzanar, California. So this is a first-person account of what it was like to grow up in these internment camps and what the conditions were like and what it did to the internees psychologically and emotionally. I read this just a couple of months ago and I found it really, really compelling. It's just a really interesting look at an aspect of World War II history that we often neglect to talk about because it's not a very nice part of American history, but it is something that we should talk about, especially in today's political climate. If you want to know what rounding up a specific group of people looks like, read this book. Also along the World War II theme, I would recommend The Girls of Atomic City, The Untold Story of the Women Who Helped Win World War II. Now, I would just preface this by saying that if you are looking for a feminist history of World War II, this is almost that, but it's not really. This is a look at a couple of the atomic cities that popped up in rural areas of America during World War II, where they focused on creating the atomic bombs. Now, of course, they didn't realize that that's what they were doing. They were told that they were going to be helping with the war effort, and seeing as there was a serious job shortage at the time, thousands and thousands of men and women jumped at the chance to not only help out their boys overseas, but to, make some money for themselves and their families. I think this is a really interesting look at life during World War II because although these aren't your average civilians, they're living in these hyper-secured kind of pop-up towns in the middle of nowhere. At the same time, these towns have normal society. They have dances and brass bands and movie theaters and segregation, and it's a really interesting look at American society and kind of this hyper tense microcosm. Then of course I have to share something Japanese related, so I would recommend to you guys Japanese Homes and Lifestyles, an illustrated journey through history by Kazuya Inaba and Shigenobu Nakayama. At the most basic level, this is the history of Japanese architecture and city planning, but you can't really look at either of those things without considering the wider social atmosphere. So I would just say this is a really unique way of looking at Japanese history overall. This starts in the prehistoric period and was written in the 80s, so it ends about then with more modern Japanese housing. So it's just a really interesting look at, like I said, the evolution of the Japanese lifestyle and the evolution of the Japanese community. Then for some more humorous reads, if you are interested in history, I would highly suggest Jane Austen's The History of England. This is an essay, I believe, that she wrote when she was a teenager and would read aloud when her family had company over, and it is really quite humorous. You get that same witty criticism that you get in her novels, and you really get to see her potential as a young writer. Then finally, I would recommend Love Voltaires Apart, A Philosopher's Guide to Relationships by Julia Edelman with illustrations by Hallie Bateman. Now, I honestly wasn't sure if I should include this on a nonfiction list because it is kind of, I guess you could say it's creative nonfiction. This was published by Icon Books and they were kind enough to send me a copy, and you probably have seen this floating around elsewhere on BookTube because it is a fairly recent release. According to the inside flap, this is a hilarious spoof relationship guide with a philosophical edge made up of philosophers' love letters, advice columns, and breakup letters. It also has a section on what different philosophers' mixtapes would look like, what their sexts would look like, and it's really quite humorous. Apparently, Julia Edelman was studying philosophy in college when she started kind of making these things up for fun for herself, and then it just turned into this book. And to give you kind of an idea of what these little excerpts look like, let me read you this particular favorite of mine. This is a love letter from Voltaire. Oh, Emily du Châtelet, you are quite a dream. I hope you like caustic men with low self-esteem. The only thing I'd love more than separation of church and state is to finally take you out on a date. The way you study physics makes my heart grow weak. When you translate Principia Mathematica, I can barely speak. Together, let us determine the elements of fire, and then who knows what may transpire. The French government can try to suppress my views, but you will forever and always be my muse. Allow me to learn from your brilliant mind and occasionally glance at that nice behind. So this is really a philosophical nonsense book filled with these fun illustrations by Hallie Bateman, and I would definitely suggest this for anybody remotely interested in philosophy, and I also think this would be a hilarious gift for anybody who takes their knowledge of philosophy slightly too seriously. This would just like take all the wind out of their sails. I would, however, recommend that you not read this all in one go, which is what I did. After a while, the novelty kind of wears off. So yeah, I would break this down by each individual section, maybe wait a day or two in between, but overall, definitely a fun philosophical read. So this was far longer than I was intending, but those were some nonfiction books I thought I would recommend to you guys today. I have, like I said, been discovering nonfiction kind of for the first time over the past year or so. It's not something I was interested in reading at all when I was in school, but that I find I am very much enjoying now. So if you guys have any recommendations to leave me, feel free to do so. I always appreciate that, but for now, I am signing off. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and are having a fantastic day, and I will see you next time. Bye!